Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to discuss our top 5 garden chores to get taken care of in the early spring. Let's get going. Early spring can be quite the frustrating time for us gardeners. The weather fluctuates from warm to cold, from gorgeous outside to snowing. And a lot of times we're looking for anything to do outside to keep us busy. So I thought today would be a great time to list off our top 5 chores to get done in the early spring. The first thing I recommend doing is removing all of the debris from any of your garden beds. Here on the homestead, we like to cover all of our beds in the wintertime with oak leaves, mostly because they're all over the place. And it helps hold in a lot of the moisture, prevents a lot of the wind erosion and such from the compost from getting blown out over the course of the harsh conditions in the wintertime. So here you can see what we've done is we've gone ahead and covered this bed here with oak leaves. Earlier this week when it was sunny, I went through and removed the oak leaves from this bed. And what you can see is, you see how dark and nice the soil is? What ends up happening is the leaves help us keep a lot of the moisture from the snow, ice, and rain from, like, say, November all the way up till the middle of February. It helps hold that into your actual soil, and hopefully it will give the microbes a nice boost when your soil starts warming up in the early spring. The second thing we like to get done in the early spring is we like to build any of our trellises we're going to need for our summer gardens. So behind us here you see a trellis system that we put up for our cherry tomatoes. Last year our cherry tomatoes we grew in cages with a single support structure, and that simply wasn't enough. They got to about 10 foot tall, and they started kind of spilling over back into the bed. So this year we're going to be a bit proactive, build our trellises a bit taller. The reason now is a great time to get this done is, number one, most of your department stores or your garden stores, wherever it is that you happen to shop, most of them are starting to get in a fresh load of garden supplies. So you'll be able to go through and pick the design or whatever that you would like to. Another reason it's great is because if you're like us and you use things locally from the homestead, a lot of the winter projects like trimming back the bamboo or cutting the low limbs on your fruit trees or the trees to mow, any of those types of things, a lot of those are good resources to use whenever you're building your garden structures. The third thing we like to take care of here in the early spring is to make sure that all of our raised beds have been topped off. I'm showing here the top garden, and as you can see, these beds are pretty much to their fullest. The reason we like to do this in the early spring goes back to what we talked about earlier with the precipitation that comes in over the winter. A lot of times your beds can settle a bit. Also, if you have large pieces of organic matter in the bottom of your beds, the ebb and flow of the freeze and thaw through the course of the wintertime will cause a lot of that stuff to break down underneath. And it can create quite a bit of room for you to put new compost or topsoil in, depending on what you're gardening. Another thing is, I like to do it after our trellises, and I'll show you why. We just put these poles in here, and after a rain, what happens is, a lot of times the rain will run down the poles and sort of wash away any of the compost around the bottom of the soil. This is just going to give an area for your roots to have issues in the future. So what we like to do is keep just a little bit of compost on the side. Once we build our trellises after a large rain for the first couple times, we'll just go through and fill in any areas that have settled. So the fourth thing that I recommend doing is adding an all-purpose fertilizer to all of your beds. Regardless of whether they're in-ground beds or raised beds, an all-purpose fertilizer at this time of year that will break down slowly is perfect. It's going to kickstart some of the microorganisms in your dirt. It's also going to allow the soil time to break those down so that they're readily available whenever your plants go in the ground at the beginning of May or late April, whenever you plant. The reason I put this at number 4 is I find that it's incredibly important to go ahead and add this in after we put in a little bit of compost to fill the beds up. Now you may wonder, why do we add amendments, after we've added compost to our bed? Well, a lot of the reason for that is that we want not only the top part of the soil to contain all of the nutrients and things that your plants need, but your roots are going to grow down, 12 inches or so into the bed. So we want to make sure between now and the start of the summer that our beds have had a chance to make sure the micronutrients and your N, P, and K have a chance to go all the way through your soil, so that as your plants mature and such through the summertime, they'll have the things they need available. Now, the fifth and final thing that we like to do at this time of the spring is we like to do an inventory of our gardening equipment. Now, we're in the greenhouse here because I would like to say it's a good time to also do a quick spring inspection of your facilities. So for us, this is a brand new greenhouse, so we don't really have a whole lot to go over. But since it is newly constructed, after every storm, I come out to make sure that all of the bolts are still tight, that nothing has come loose. Probably because I'm paranoid. We also get quite a few big time storms this time of year here in 7B. A few things that I like to go over. I like to make sure that I have my seed trays, so when it's time to go ahead and start all of our summer vegetables, I have those available. Make sure all of my racks are in good order. I will also go through all of my hand tools, my hand trowels. In fact, for me, I go ahead and do all of my yard equipment as well this time of year. I'll start the mower up, make sure the tiller is running, all of those things that I'm going to need here in a couple months. I said this last year and I'm going to repeat it now. Do yourself a solid and go through these checklists now, because by the time it comes ready to mow and that sort of thing, it's going to be the time for everybody else, and you do not want to have your mower breakdown at the same time everybody else is discovering that their mowers also need to be repaired. Well, that wraps up our early spring chores list. Let me know in the comments below, what is it that you do in the early spring to prepare for your gardening season? As always, I appreciate everyone who made it here till the end. Till next time, I hope everybody takes care of themselves. Peace.